John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
You mentioned in one of your last talks that petroleum wasn't what we thought it was, that it wasn't a fossil fuel, that it didn't come from fossil animals.
Yeah.
Is it just a mineral? Is it a mineral like any other mineral? Is that how it what would you say? What's the origin of
you see,
petroleum?
when they first found petroleum, because they were beginning to make motors and needed on axles or wheels on railroad trains and all that sort of thing, and remember, trains started in the beginning of the 19th century, then oil went from just a lubricant to a fuel, and it made it valuable. And Rockefeller happened to be the smartest man in the business at the time, but he made most of his money, or much of it, off the transport of the petroleum as well as selling it. But one thing they realized was, because oil is putting a price on oil is like putting a price on a pail of water. You know, there's no initial cost. It's in the ground, and in those days they were, some of it almost what you'd call surface mining the oil. They didn't go down deep. So in order to get the price up, they hit on the idea that they would have to make it appear to be scarce. That after we take the next few barrels out, we're probably going to have to close as well. You know, that kind of thing. Well, a very fortuitous event. In 1892, there was a convention in Geneva of scientists to determine what organic substances are. Well, the definition of organic is a substance with hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. And so it's usually a living substance, a tree. You analyze a dead tree, hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, and grass and so on, living things. Animals, we are hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. So at this Geneva Convention, Rockefeller took advantage of sending some scientists over who said, oil, petroleum, is hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon. Therefore, it must be derived from the spoiling, the rotting of formerly living matter. And playing the game properly, when this scientific convention was over, they defined oil as the residue from formerly living matter. Well, that makes it a fossil fuel. I don't know why they decided to use the word fossil, but it says formerly living matter, it's fossil. Well, of course, today, and another thing we should know is that there has never been a fossil, a real fossil, found below 16,000 feet. And you can't argue at 16,000 as a level line because someplace the ground sinks and so on. But 16 is what the scientists say, 16,000. We mine oil, or we drill for oil, at 30,000, 33,000, 28,000 every day of the week. So right there we rule it out that it isn't fossil fuel. It's called fossil fuel for the minds of the public to feel that it is an asset that is running out, being depleted. We talk about depletion allowance, which is a lot of, and actually if you know the world's oil supply, you know that it is not going to run out for an awfully long time. It is the second most prevalent liquid on Earth. And we haven't begun to dig. Well, with all that background, you see, the people in charge of the petroleum business, for perfectly reasonable business things, like any other man in the business, wants to keep his price as high as he can get away with. And the way to do is just say, well, there's no more. The last barrel is going to cost $1,000, and then it's all done. And they preach that stuff. What bothers me is that in geology books, it's in there. The geologists say it's a fossil fuel. They've been bought. I mean, I went to a 4-year federal staff energy seminar run by the government of the United States during the so-called energy crisis. I was the participant that represented the railroad industry. The airline industry was there. Every AA, administrative assistant of senators and congressmen, was there. The CIA was there. The Defense Department was there. The State Department was there. Sometimes sitting right in front of me in the row would be Henry Kissinger with his friend, the head of Department of Defense. It's too bad I can't put the names with them. But anyway, people like that, top men in the government, sitting there listening to the Federal Staff Energy Seminar. Well, what this was doing is for 4 years, they were teaching a propaganda line to the leading people in this country, and therefore to the leading people in the world, when you include the Kissinger and Schlesinger, among others. And the object of it was, as Kissinger used in his own terms when it was time for him to speak, to create a world price for oil. In other words, not 30 cents a gallon here and 90 cents a gallon there, but let's get a world price. That's their goal, and they're trying to do that for wheat and everything else. We don't realize what the controls are, whether it's oil or some of these other things. Almost everything today is being categorized at the highest price they can possibly make it go. And so calling petroleum a fossil fuel is the basis for this system with respect to petroleum. And I don't know if the name Arthur Kantrowitz rings any bell. Arthur Kantrowitz is the head of the Kantrowitz Labs set up by the Avco company near Boston, scientific laboratories. And a great man in the scientific world. And Kantrowitz and I were sitting at a table at this seminar once, and the table happened to be all young college grad, PhD geologists. And so just to get a conversation started, I turned to Kantrowitz and I said, Arthur, what do you think about this foolishness of these speakers talking about fossil fuel? And it was kind of put up. He started laughing. He said, that gets me. He says, I don't have a geology degree, but he had 1,000 other degrees. And he said, I don't understand. He said, you'd think that these heads, these other fellows at the table, we did it on purpose, start listening, And he asked, he said, are you gentlemen? He says, you're here at the meeting. Are you gentlemen by any chance geologists? And one fellow, yes, I am. And the other one, yeah. He said, well, why don't you tell me? He said, why is oil? And he went on like that. We brought the house down because nobody could argue with Kantrowitz. He like Einstein. People aren't going to. And he told them right there. He said, just drop it. But it's in all the books and in all the papers. But it started from that strange meeting in 1892, a scientific convention. I have a big, thick scientific encyclopedia put out by the Divan Ostrin Company that's about 15 years old now, but it has the whole story of the conference. It doesn't have the Rockefeller part, but it has the whole story of how they straightened out organic chemicals and how it was all figured, and they've got petroleum right in there.
Amazing. Amazing. So
these aren't accidental things, you see. There's a dollar sign behind almost everything.
Thank you, Kimberly.
These hearings are now reconvened. Without going into the details of the pending investigation,
No problem.
I would like to make a comment on the unfortunate incident that we all just witnessed. Now, this body, well, indeed, our whole system of government is imperfect. It's imperfect because it depends on people. Human beings who make mistakes, act in haste, misinterpret things.
Yeah, and do things like buy 10,000 copies of your autobiography, which, by the way, is not a crime unless you make people read it.
Damn it, sir, you are out of order.
Hey. To hell with order. The truth is gonna come out here today, all right?
All right. You want the truth? Here's the truth, Congressman. The man you see before you is nothing but a common criminal. He got into this house through fraud. Now, you want more truth, Congressman? Here's your rap sheet. Arrest for bookmaking, card sharping, con games, mail fraud. You know, I had hoped to avoid damaging this noble institution, but I can see that you have no respect for this institution or for anything else. There, I dare you to respond.
Yeah, this is me. Can't deny it. Can't deny anything on here. I did all of this, except for this thing. This woman got her shoes back. This woman here. But everything else on this list is real. I did it, don't deny it. But all of this is nothing compared to the shit that I pulled off right here in Washington. And everything that I did in this town would be considered legit.
Now that is enough. Have you no shame, Mr. Johnson? Do you deny that just 5 minutes ago you attempted to impugn the integrity of this committee and extort you take our conversation from a highly respected business
Bastards! You think you hang me out to dry? Bullshit! If I go down, you go down, dead gods! Hey, you remember that $300,000 you squeezed out of me for that phony voter registration scam, huh? What about the $200,000 on that phony foundation, huh? Or those bundle checks by executive cut in your pocket? What's that, just water under the bridge? Hey, look, I trusted you. I gave you my condo and bail. I let you have my corporate jet to fly all over the goddamn world. No. I even bought 10,000 copies of your boring, dull-ass autobiography.
Hold on! Sit down! I'm trying to tell you something! What? I didn't have a goddamn thing to do with this!
Bullshit!
No, hold on, please!
Order! Order! Clear the room! Clear the goddamn room! I want order! I will have order!
Come on, let's hear it for ex-Chairman Dodge, huh? Come on, put your hands together! Let's hear it for the retiring chairman! You can do much better than that. This man is going to jail! Give him a big round of applause!
Go right in your book!
Thomas, what the hell are you doing? We're all gonna go to jail!
Son of a bitch!
Look what you did to your man! Look what you did! Hey! Yeah, you almost got your ass whipped just there. Hold him really tight. Hold him. I want to get some good pictures where I got the color in his cheeks. Now smile for the cameras, Dick. How am I doing? Huh?
Smile, please.
He returned to the Vienna. This is Ed Fletcher in Vienna.
Take two, Q Howard.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change.
How many stations does this go out?
You've got to get mad.
67. I know it goes to Louisville and Atlanta.
I'm not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil crisis. But first, get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell, and say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Who are you talking to, Herb?
CGG, Atlanta.
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Herb?
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Ted?
But first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
They're yelling in Baton Rouge.
Get up out of your chair.
Son of a bitch! We struck the mother load!
Stick your head out of the window, open it, and stick your head out and keep yelling and yell, I'm as mad as hell. I'm not going to take this anymore. Just get up from your chairs right now. Go to the window.
Where are you going? I don't want to see if anybody's yelling.
Window, open it and stick your head out and yell and keep yelling. I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take this anymore.
I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore! I'm mad as hell! I'm not gonna take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell! I'm not going to take it anymore.
I'm mad as hell and I'm not gonna take it anymore!
I'm mad as hell!
Hey guys, welcome. Andre Hodge, Infinite Potential Healing, Servant of Truth, with you once more. Thank you for being here, thank you for finding me, and thank you for all that you're doing in your world that probably isn't recognized. I know I'm very fortunate to have pretty amazing people that find me, and a lot have been through really rough lives and been messed up or horrific journeys that are amazing to hear and you know, be an ally to if people seek me out and that. So I really appreciate all that you've had to endure, not just this life, every freaking life. If you've gone through my Universal Sovereignty Declaration, how epic we are as souls. So apart from the frackers that are undercover trying to mess with me and target me and all that, I know I'm a bit of a fracker magnet, so I'm trying to be a reformed fracker magnet here. So if you want to observe some frackers, basically have a look at everyone I've dealt with on a public level for the last 3 years and discern them very, very highly, alright? But so I'm going to do my best to be a reformed fracker magnet here that we all have probably been in our lives, alright? To offer what I offer going forward, because if you have been thorough in my recent sort of releases, particularly the last one, which was the universal audit from the pure source level, once we established the pure source was invaded and we've got the 10,000 Central Sun allies and 1,000 D-Dragons and stuff, now we've got the superiority in our universe that we can really take it home, and the audit was a huge victory, alright? And so it's a couple of weeks after that, and I didn't do a release last week. I decided to chill out at the Aussie beaches rather than work. Being a keyboard ninja for hours in the dark, I just thought I'd just go and enjoy the March Aussie beach in between sessions and get some healing and some sun, because I'm in frickin' Australia. I'm going to enjoy the beach, like enjoy the world, this amazing planet that we're on, alright? So I sort of left it and stepped back, and for myself, doing the audit on March 2021 was a huge victory, and we're on the other side of it. So it's interesting. There's been a lot of sort of targeting and all that sort of stuff, and I sort of just play with it and I work out the mechanics of it. So this is what I do, and this is what you guys can do with that audit. If I get a little scratch, right, a little bit of interference, a little annoyance on any level, I just tap into pure source and initiate a universal audit of everyone in it, and then all the frackers that get outed and all their shit gets taken away, that they're doing scumbaggery shit, alright, then I let it be known that in the audit, this fracker was the one that caused all your suffering. So you got an issue, you got a beef, this one of your allies did it, alright? So I'm just giving you heads up of sort of what you all can do. You can initiate audits anytime, just like 24/7 GSF. It's 24/7 audits, and everyone, any misdeeds that are done will trigger an audit and stuff. So it's not about me doing it. It's not about my allies doing it. We all can do it anytime, alright? And this is another thing that's sort of popped up, and I've been aware of it for a while, but it's just been interesting of late, alright? So if you guys have explored the Universal Sovereignty Declaration in the influences, there's a particular section where it's all calling out people that have sort of sold their soul out for gifts, alright? I'll just use that language because they've compromised themselves to get talents that aren't organic to themselves but are given by invader frackers because they're ambitious and they want to get ahead and all this sort of stuff. So one of the variables going on is that there's people out there that don't like being called out, right? And don't like being busted, because if you do negative stuff with stuff that isn't organic to you to interfere with the potential of Earth and all of us, then you've got karmic consequence, right? So, you know, like I say, if any violation goes on, anything audited, any codes that are used, any talents and stuff that are busted, then they get chucked in the spiritual court of equity and they have to face the consequences. So, and then if people have, so don't underestimate, there's people in the community that have made agreements with the negative side that are trying to obfuscate what they've done, right? And say me as a truth warrior that's willing to talk all about this stuff and even bring these concepts to the fore for most people that have no idea this has been done to them, then I'm a true threat for their falsehood, alright? So, yeah, don't underestimate, there's people in the community, they might talk a big game, they might be charismatic, but they've done a lot of negative bullshit and they're doing it on the multi-D, and they're very sinister in the multi-D, okay? And so, yeah, it's just funny, like I said, trying to be a reformed fracker magnet, where these scumbags come and get into my world, alright? And try to cozy up, a bit like, I don't know if you ever went clubbing and stuff, but there's like a VIP section in some clubs where they get exclusive access and everyone else is lining up. So it's like, people just want to cozy up to me and get in my world and perhaps hack me and limit my perceptions and all this sort of shit, but to hide the diabolical shit they've done in the past. So there's a lot of practitioners and very aware people that have been like, you know, the Aztec heart cut out sort of priests that sacrifice people, and they've taken their codes and sabotaged their heart and tech and codes all through time to target people and stuff. And it's not about doing the best and resolving all this for humanity. It's all about obfuscating all the shit they've done in the past, and they'd rather let everyone in the universe burn to hide that shit. It's just, can you believe that crap goes on? Alright? This is like, you can't believe how diabolical the shit is that has been out there, and we're just busting all these people. And so the audit was massive, and yeah, the people were trying to escape it and all sorts of shit, but everyone, it's seen, like, people have mystery dimensions outside of time stash spots where they do all their shit, or they stash all their like diabolical skeletons in their closet or in other dimensions and stuff, and everything just gets audited. It's all busted, they're all seen and stuff, so it's just fascinating. So there's going to be like a fracker scramble. They're just going to be scrambling, trying to cover their shit and all sorts of stuff. So just watch out for people that have made negative agreements to get access to talents but are doing negative stuff. Like, I know, for instance, there's one particular individual that made an agreement with Greedy King in 2017-18 to mess with me in the last 6 months, you know. So there was all these strategies going on way back then to derail, say, myself now. And if you're aligned with your purity, your truth, your authenticity, and your integrity, don't underestimate how rare that is, alright? I'm not trying to be critical or harsh on people and stuff. It's to get through this and get beyond the fracker barrier. All your violations will be the crack in your dam to not allow you to get there. So you're going to have to deal with it, alright? You're going to have to take responsibility for what you've done. Just realize the team I've got around me, we see everything. We know what's driving you, what your intentions are and stuff. So it's just really interesting, alright? And it's like a transition to that potential, and yeah, there's a lot of people that aren't a match to it, so they're going to try and prevent it, if that makes sense. And so if you're aligned with integrity and honor and truth and doing the best for your fellow man and stuff, you know, like in those times where things get bad, you think the best is revealed in people. I would offer that the truth is revealed in people. And so one of the things that we did in the last month or two was shut down the Egypt sort of Sphinx stuff feeding to other matrices and Nibiru and stuff like that. So there's a lot more life force being returned to humanity, but all it's going to do is lift the veil in people and all the shit that they've been suppressing and not wanting to deal with, and it's going to be in people's faces. So if you've been courageous and been very thorough, it's like cram before the exam time, and a lot of people haven't studied, alright? I haven't done the healing, and so all that crap's going to be revealed. And just for me, my thing has always been, if I see stuff, I'd take care of it, or I seek someone out to get ahead, because you never know what's going to unfold. And I've always talked about like the cracks in the dam around, you know, it might be low and like a tiny little, I'll show you the image actually. It might be a little tiny little crack in the lower levels, but up higher it's like a massive chasm. So those of you that have been very proactive on your healing and stuff, and you know, we all have potentials that we may need to resolve that haven't revealed themselves because they're reliant on resolving other components to allow those components to get resolved. But just those of you that have been proactive and enjoy healing and see the benefit of it and employ it in your life, you just got a massive edge over the majority out there, okay? And so I'm just offering you all this because don't underestimate how rare and precious you are. And so you've got to really integrate self-worth and value, because you're not responsible for other people. They're going to have to go through their journey, and you might want to be compassionate and help people through it. But I would, in Empire Strikes Back, when Yoda just sits back and lets Luke go and defeat his own Darth Vader, the shadow sort of thing, I think a lot of people they're gonna have nowhere left to turn to deal with their own stuff, right?
There's something not right here. I feel cold.
That place is strong. The dark side of the Force. A domain of evil it is. And you must go.
What's in there?
Only what you take with you. Your weapons. You will not need them.
I would, in Empire Strikes Back, when Yoda just sits back and lets Luke go and defeat his own Darth Vader, the shadow sort of thing, I think a lot of people they're gonna have nowhere left to turn to deal with their own stuff, right? And so you're not responsible for them. If you want to be responsible, I would engage a healer, go do MCKS pranic healing and get on that and learn to master yourself, and then, support the community that way and give them an outlet, But I've always offered that, the edge I've had is being able to fall back on myself as a healer, that I can heal myself. So those of you that have been proactive over the years and got onto that, well done. it's probably going to pay off now, alright? So this video I'm going to make Influences Part 6, and I'm going to aim to not talk too much. I'm just going to get into it because the main body is going to be an awesome lecture by this guy called Lindsey Graham, and it's a lecture he did, I think, about 2007 and 8. It was a bit before I started getting into stuff, but if you know my past, my history, the money system was a big variable. And the reason why I got into exploring all these concepts was back in when the financial crisis was happening in 2008, I actually lost a lot of money because I thought that the logic of the world was if America are in a lot of financial trouble, they will be like seen as gangrene and cut off, so the rest of the world will survive. But I was totally wrong. I didn't realize or appreciate the interconnectivity, and everything was interwebbed with everything else, alright? And so that losing money, believing the narrative, triggered me to go and not want to feel that financial pain, to expand my conscious Tetris, to get all the components, to see what was really going on. And that was really what inspired me to be here now and realize how the world works. And many of you have probably never heard of Lindsey Graham before. He's an interesting guy. He's obviously he's got where he comes from and all that sort of stuff, but you know he's a good dude, and he just wants the best for us. And the Granada Forum was an interesting place, which they would offer a platform for many teachers and courageous people like this that had amazing truths to share, right? So I'm not sure how long this is going to be. I'm not sure what clips I might share at the start. I'm going to aim to not talk too much because I'm just wanting to offer the main body. I reviewed this amazing lecture late last year because Henry Kissinger died, and this lecture, one of the things in the 70s Henry Kissinger went around to do, he established the markets, like the world price for coal and all that. So you know, you watch news and the finances, and they've got like prices of Texas crude oil and all the other oils and stuff like that. That was never established. So what he did was he went around the world and established like the central markets for, you know, trading like copper and all that sort of stuff. And I thought this lecture had it. I'm not sure where I've got that, where it was actually discussed that he did this, but the cool thing about this particular lecture, and it's very rare, it's not talked about anywhere else, was his, after like the 70s shock with inflation and oil, where Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard and stuff, there was a lot of revolt around the world. And then this picks up after that a bit later in the lecture, where he went, say, to the Middle East and established the relationship between the oil producers buying US debt and stuff like that. And so the really cool thing about this lecture is that it's about a massive oil reserve that was found in Alaska that was actually shut down to not be accessed, and from a national security perspective they didn't allow it to be accessed. And so this was done in, I think, 2008, and they call out what was likely in the future with the price of, say, gas in America and the inflation and stuff. So when I watched this, it was like prophetic. It's like talking about the potentials in the future, but if you listen to it, it's like a documentary. It's what's gone on, all right? And so my purpose for sharing this is, say I talk about the Asher and the big 25,000 year sort of stuff, and then I'm talking about the targeting and the war on the conscious, like the invaders. Earth is an occupied, colonized planet, and we're incarnating into an incarnation war to try and take back freedom for the universe of all the invaders that have had the edge because they've never had to accommodate source or universal law, where we've had to honor that. And so those of you that have invested into the Universal Sovereignty Declaration, I really thank you, because it was interesting last week in Australia. They tried to ram the digital ID through, and it got through one of the houses, and then it got held up. All right, so there was a lot of pushback. And to me, like, what we've said is we've taken control of the government buildings at 22D. We're doing audits all the time. These frackers can't do their shit, and they're needing to harvest energy and do it in like an obfuscated, hidden way that just sneaks shit through, and they're just not, it's not going to work, right? So a part of me sharing this is just how diabolical sort of the aspect and control are to create the crises we're in, right? That are not organic, right? So there's this big scary like eclipse coming, everyone's in fear and blah blah blah. One of the things, my reason for doing this is actually showing the crises have to be like the stability in civilization is I come from an IT background where stability and, you know, like a single point of failure isn't possible sort of thing. So there's resilience built in. And I remember on Netflix, there's a couple of documentary series from 2017-18 on a couple of Roman emperors. And one of them was about the just shoddy management of the empire that led to a lot of like the lack of food that led to like disease and stuff. And it was sort of a couple of the emperors towards the end of the Roman Empire sort of thing. And it was just about the mismanagement of the empire that brought about its downfall sort of thing. And so what's going on in the world at the moment, there's, to me, the language relative to suppressing truth and like opposition view, like there's laws being rolled out that, you know, it's like you offend someone, it's a crime sort of thing. So there's a cultural genocide going on before our eyes where they're allowing, if you watched Influences Part 5, the Fletcher Prouty thing, what he talked about Vietnam, it's a metaphor of what's going on now, but it's happening all over the world. And having an opposition to that, you're being suppressed. So there's like, the metaphor is a bit like in Australia, they took away, they call it the stolen generation, where say the indigenous communities had their children stolen and put into foster families and put through like the education system to destroy their culture. And I know you guys in North America and Canada and stuff, that happened to the indigenous, and it was diabolical what happened in Canada. But right now, I feel that language is, there's a cultural genocide going on to the West, okay? And they're using sort of the apparatus of the infrastructure of technology like social media and all that to prevent opposition, an opposition voice of the falsehood and the very misguided laws going on, all right? And so those of you that feel like you don't feel safe to voice your truth, I just offer this. Like I work very closely with Earth, and the people around me do as well, and she asked me for healing, all right? And I only do that when I'm up for it, and it's been pretty rough, but I love it, you know? What doesn't kill you make you stronger. So we're very strong now, guys. Like we're like invader cockroaches, big time, alright? But I would offer, if you feel distorted, like you imagine a balloon that's being compressed and there's that distortion popping out because it's not your authentic nature to hold your truth back. An outlet I'll offer for that, for those in different areas of the world, is in my sovereignty declaration. The truth is the only narrative supported by Earth, alright? So if you feel like your truth is being suppressed by the structures around you, they're in violation of your connection to Earth and the authenticity of pure source and the 10,000 central suns and the 1,000D dragons and stuff, alright? So I'm offering you that I've created an outlet to internalize that, to take down the structures that are limiting the rest of us, okay? So you can do it in an internal sort of healing way to transmute all the reality, alright? I'll just offer that. I mean, I come from a vested interest because I created the sovereignty declaration, so you got to discern that if I'm trying to promote it like everyone else is, but I don't create anything out of anything other than trying to help accelerate our development and getting over this and having the farewell fracker party like I talked about in the last video. So yeah, the one thing I didn't say before is, like, if people have issues with dragons and stuff, it's because they've stolen codes and they don't want the 1,000D dragons taking back the shit that they've stolen from people, right? So that's a bit of an indicator of what's going on out there. But yeah, like, I just wanted to offer, I feel this is a very rich and dense in truth lecture by a pretty amazing guy that you probably never heard of. And I really love giving platforms for the different teachers, so you get a perspective of the different frequencies and where the people come from and the courage they have in their journey and the quality of individuals. There's a lot of people that haven't, they're very obfuscated and haven't really been known for a long time, and I've just been in the trenches for a long time. And when I was back in the financial era, he mentions Perkins, economic hitman. I forget his phone name. That's interesting, but I can see his face. But he talks about that guy. So there was many awesome components in here that I went and did more research on and stuff and searched for and stuff. But as far as an investment of time, this hour or so of him talking all about these things, it will probably give you a perspective so rich it might take you years if you can ever find all this stuff. So I think it's going to be a real epic investment if you explore it. It might feel a lot of conscious Tetris sort of components. Like I was trying to say about the Asher to the spiritual community now, it will offer components that will be relative to the Leviathan force and the incarnation, more of these invader souls incarnating into bodies to be in ruling situations and stuff. It will help offer a bit of a relationship between how that all percolates into the 3D and the control of the structure of society and all that sort of stuff. The other thing is, we're now in 2024 with, say, the US in, $34 trillion debt. He was going to talk about how it was in sort of 2000 and before 9/11, the US was only in $1.5 trillion debt and stuff. So a lot of, like I said, society by its nature is very resilient, okay? So in order to create the distortion and the failure of society, there's got to be a lot of mismanagement. So he was talking about 2007 and 8 when George Bush and Cheney were in office in the US and stuff. So it's a long time ago, but it makes it rich now because he was talking about the future at the time, which we're living now, all right? And just the strategic stuff that is not done in people's best interests. It's all about control and dominance and hooking everything in and consequence and stuff. And so yeah, I just thought this would be a very potent sort of release with all these components, with what was brewing and all the deliberate instability going on and the mismanagement of governments all around the world with, like I said, in Influences Part 5, relative to the migration sort of stuff, which is being done and not being discussed. And then it's like, it's almost getting to a crime to talk about it. It is in some areas of the world, right? Let alone all the negative sexual stuff going on to breed the crime in those regions. And yeah, they're not managing crime. They're worried about the dissidents, that the opposition to the mismanagement going on, right? So all of this stuff, wherever you are, it's all potential violations of you and stuff. And so violation is your asset, and I've offered the sovereignty declaration for that, okay? But I would offer that you guys here have been resilient through all the efforts to derail me and discredit me and all that sort of stuff. It's like they wouldn't do that unless I was a threat, alright? So I've offered in the past about discerning me and all that sort of stuff, but I would flip it now and see, I've come out the other side, and I offer all the data, all the variables, because I attempt to offer me as a component to accelerate your discernment mechanics, all right? So I really hope over the last 8-9 months with all the stuff I've been a part of, that your discernment mechanics is vastly improved now with all this experience and where we are now. And perhaps you're sensing there aren't many people around you and stuff. So while everything is pretty crazy, then your fire is powering up and you're feeling very potent and feeling very strong and stuff. So my effort to offer all these, whether what clips I offer at the start in this influences part 6, relative to the BS energy crisis and all the narrative crap and the mismanagement of things out there to set up failures to bring about the change. A lot of the stuff I've said in the Sovereignty Declaration, it's all there, you know. So, because they've got plans that they're attempting to roll out, right? And they're not going to stop, and they need to be put down. So, I've sort of evolved my attitude and the way I present myself, because we need to be strong, guys. It's not time for weakness. It's not time for spiritual kumbaya crap. It's like warrior time, and defend my space and defend my region of earth and be an anchor for the potential for us all in alignment with pure source and truth, all right? And Earth Mother, who's bubbling up, she's not subbed out, she's brewing stuff, right? So in my opinion, on the other side of the fracture barrier, we've got an ascendancy. We just need to anchor it. We've had some big victories on a structural level. Like I don't work mainly on the 3D. I go for the jugular of the apex of the negative multi-D out there and just tear them apart, which should be the thing that percolates through to loosen the strength and the stronghold that it's been, right? If we take care of the head of the snake, literally, then it frees it up for the 3D, as I said about the returning the energy to people and stuff relative to the Egypt stuff, Galactic Special Forces Part 30 a few weeks ago and stuff. So this is probably a good intro. I'm not going to try and make this too long, but the main body is about an hour. The intro clips, who knows how long it is, and then me offering my component, it might be a couple hours. So what I'm going to do is round it out, the intro sort of section of me here, and allow you to really enjoy this amazing, brave lecture by Lindsey Graham, someone that you probably never heard of before, but it's probably going to be one of the most densest financial lectures you've ever heard, but it all relates to all the stuff that I talk about and that. So when I talk about what I do, just assume that I've watched thousands of hours of this sort of type of stuff to formulate my algorithm, my solution, because I'm solution orientated, all right? And so part of the solution here is to accelerate your awareness and your development of what is actually going on, because there's a lot of BS going on in the background that we're never told about. So I really hope you enjoy it, and I'll do a short outro at the end and see how you go, guys. It's enjoy. It might change you by the end of this, but it will be like, yes, that answers so much stuff, right? So on this time with the eclipse coming that's pretty big, which in the future it won't matter, I will offer a lot of truth for you guys to appreciate. What is going on is not organic, it's all manufactured, and so it takes a lot of energy for that. And so if we anchor the truth and do our sovereignty work, and that, if you want to include my declaration in it, then knowing all these violations, we have a lot of assets, so it's time to use them and call them in, because we're all karma trillionaires by all these frackers, right? We've got a lot of debts that we're owed, and we need to call them in and clobber them, right? So enjoy. I'll see you on the other side. I hope you get a lot from this.
He said you don't seem to have both of your oars in the water.
You cannot pull $95 million in one chunk from a bank the size of Borough National. When I undertook to manage this plan, you agreed to do it gradually in small amounts. You're now starting to move billions in a matter of weeks.
The world economic situation is deteriorating more rapidly than we had thought. We don't think we can afford to wait, Max.
There will be no collapse in the foreseeable future unless you panic and start it with some damn fool move like this.
And if you are wrong, what then? We wake up one morning, our oil is gone. We find that we have sold all we have in exchange for paper money that is worthless.
you're risking immediate exposure.
We risk it every day. If Charles Winters could stumble on that account, it's just a question of time before someone else finds out. And when that happens...
No one else will find out if you revert to your original timetable.
All right, Max. We'll think about it. But I'm not sure what our answer will be.
You're playing with the end of the world, you know.
The end of the world, as you know it.
I trust you are aware that we're being controlled in every area of our lives, even the toothbrush that you will use tonight to brush your teeth with. Otherwise, what you're going to hear for the next few moments' time could be very disturbing to you. So, here are the facts. There is as much crude oil on the North Slope of Alaska as there is in Saudi Arabia. The governor of Alaska stated on the Bill Mayer TV show, Real Time, on March the 18th, 2005, there is potentially enough crude oil on the North Slope of Alaska to supply the entire United States of America for 200 years. He's correct. Peak oil is a misnomer. It is an idea perpetrated by the powers that be for the purpose of deceiving the American public. Russia has just drilled some what they call super deep wells to the depth of 40,230 feet. Super deep wells, which they call Cola SG3, they have found massive amounts of oil. The world is nowhere near running out of crude oil. Gasoline at the gas pump could be less than $1.50 a gallon within the next 1 year here in the United States of America if only our President and Vice President and our administration in Washington would be honest with the American people. There is enough natural gas on the North Slope of Alaska to supply the entire United States of America for over 200 years if every other natural gas well in America were cut off tomorrow morning at the projected rate of increased consumption. Every 24 hours at Prudhoe Bay, Alaska, on the North Slope where the large oil field is, they pump back into the ground 1 billion cubic feet of natural gas that comes up with the oil. You did hear correctly. I did not say million. I said 1 billion cubic feet. And just in case you would like some details and would wish to follow further with what I'm saying to attempt to prove right or wrong, try this one. Contact someone you know that works on the North Slope of Alaska, or anyone that has any contact with anyone there, and ask them this. They are using 48 747 type jet aircraft engines in order to pump that 1 billion cubic feet of natural gas back into the ground every 24 hours. If you want details, we can go as far as you'd like. Dr. Stan Monteith, you know who I'm speaking of, don't you? Very famous radio talk show host, very conservative individual. I've been on his station, on his program many times in the past year. Dr. Stan said to me a while back, he said, Lindsey, I like to prove what I have on my show. He said, can you in some way verify the information that you're giving in your book, The Energy Non-Crisis, and the other things that you have to say? And I said, well, Dr. Stan, for you, knowing who you are, and the fact that you will not tell false about what you hear, I say, yes, I will give you the name of an individual who right now is working for BP Oil Company. As you remember, BP bought out Arco, and BP and Arco were basically the ones that produced the entire Prudhoe Bay oil field, east and west side, Arco on the east side, BP on the west side. And I said, I will give you the name of an individual who still works there, that was back there during the days when I was there, that saw the Gull Island field brought in and proven Dr. Stan Monteith took his phone number. I will not give his name for protection because this man has said, if you can ever get a congressman who will make a congressional investigation out of this, he said, I will appear, even though it might cost me my life and my family. So I said, Dr. Stan, I'm sure you'll keep it there, and therefore I won't give his name tonight. But Dr. Stan called him, found out he does work for BP, verified who he was, and his question was, is what Lindsey Williams says in his book, The Energy Non-Crisis, true? The gentleman said, yes. Everything he says is true in fact, but he said he hasn't told what I know since he left. And Dr. Stan said, what's that? He said, since Lindsey left the Prudhoe Bay oil field as chaplain, we since have discovered another field as large as Gull Island. America has everything we need on the North Slope of Alaska. My book, The Energy Non-Crisis, is the only book on the face of the earth that tells of the largest oil pool in North America, possibly the largest oil pool on the face of the earth, that was discovered, brought in, tested, and proven when I was there as a chaplain. And today, not one drop of that oil has ever been allowed to come to the American people by order of the government of the United States of America. Gasoline, within 12 months' time, could be at the gas pump in California less than $1.50 a gallon if only the administration in Washington would be honest with us as American people. I'll never forget that day. I had just gone to Alaska as a missionary. It was 1970. Came out in the Anchorage newspaper, Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline to be built. 25,000 pipeliners to converge on the state of Alaska to build that 800-mile pipeline, 4-foot diameter, largest pipe ever constructed on the face of the earth for carrying of crude oil, $12 billion to be spent in 3 years' time, 25,000 pipeliners to converge on the state of Alaska. The first thing that came to my mind was, as a Baptist missionary, 25,000 of the most cussingest, drinkingest, honorous folks on the face of the earth. And believe you me, that was the understatement of the year when I arrived on the pipeline. So I went to Alaska Pipeline Service Company and I said, don't you need a chaplain on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline? They said, well, we never had a chaplain on any pipeline in the world. We wouldn't know what to do with you. They said, come back and see us later. Well, I did. I guess persistence paid off, because after a number of months they finally said, all right, we'll let you have the northern 7 camps, including the big oil field at Prudhoe Bay, down to Galbraith Lake in the Brooks Mountains, and go up there and see what you can do. Just hold a worship service in each one of the camps once a day. Said the men don't know the difference. After all, they worked 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. They don't know what Sunday is, and I did. About 6 months later, Mr. R.H. King, I'll never forget him, Mr. R.H. King came to me. He was a personnel relations man with Alaska, and he said, Chaplain, we never knew what value you would be to us. He said, you're literally saving us thousands of dollars of counseling fees that we aren't having to pay, and we have just voted to give you executive status if you will accept it. And I said, well, Mr. King, what does that mean? I've never been an executive on anybody's board but the Lord's. And I said, well, what? He said, well, you can go any place you'd like, see anything you'd like to see. We'll let you have your own vehicle, give you an executive pass. And he said, we would like to invite you to sit in on our board meetings in an advisory capacity in order to help the relationship between management and labor. For the next 3 years' time, only by the providence of God, because it never could have been any other way, I had the opportunity to sit with, live in the same dorms with, rub shoulders with, sit across the table from the most powerful, controlling, manipulative men on the face of this earth. The ones that you only read about in books. It changed my life. I never knew such people existed. I'd been a Baptist minister for 20 years. I'd had the privilege of being around honest people and deacons and good Christians. And all of a sudden I was thrown into the midst of those that you hear that control the world. If someone had asked me in 1970, Lindsey Williams, do you believe there's a group of people on the face of the earth who control the world? I would have said, not only do I believe it, I would have said in 1970, I would have said, who are you, a John Bircher? If someone had asked me in 1980, Lindsey Williams, do you believe there's a group of people on the face of the earth who tell the president what to do, who tell the Arabs what they're going to give them for a barrel of oil, who dictate to the world what they should do? I would have said, not only do I believe it, I sat and listened to them talk about it. For 3 years' time, strictly by the problem. Here I was, an unknown little aviation missionary. Nobody knew who Lindsey Williams was. Back out in the bush country of Alaska, and all of a sudden had an opportunity to sit with the people that you only read about. I remember one night, I'd been around them all day long. I couldn't believe there were such human beings on the face of the earth. I remember I went back to my dorm room, utterly exasperated at what I had seen and heard that day. I laid down on my bed in utter frustration, looked up at the ceiling and literally cried out to God. And I said, God, how can there be such dastardly people on the face of the earth that literally control the world? Folks, there are people who control the world. They have an agenda. They know what they are doing. How do I know? I was there. I lived with them for 3 years' time. I sat in their board meetings and heard what they had to say. My book, The Energy Non-Crisis, and I've written 6 books, by the way, have 2 of them here with me tonight. My books, all of them, including this one, my first one, The Energy Non-Crisis, are different than any other books you'll ever read. The reason they're different is because I did not research someone else's materials in order to write these books. These books are what I lived. First-hand stories of the people that I rubbed shoulders with. Ones that I knew them by first name, and I was considered to be their chaplain and minister. The power controllers of the world, and I write from first-hand experience. I lived my story. Well, finally, after about 2 years of this, I decided no one's ever going to believe a little missionary like me. If I ever decide to tell this story, no one would pay any attention to it. After all, how do they know I'm telling the truth? So I contacted a gentleman of great prestige, a man that I knew anyone would trust what he had to say. He writes the foreword to my book, The Energy Non-Crisis. His name is Senator Hugh Chance from the state of Colorado. And I said, Hugh, I'd like you to come to Prudhoe Bay and spend a week with me. I'll make all the arrangements with the oil company officials for you to see, talk with, have interviews with, anyone you'd like. He took me up on my offer. I made all the arrangements. He came to Prudhoe Bay. He spent 1 week with me. He interviewed every oil company official he wanted, from the senior executive with Atlantic Richfield down to BP oil company officials. And anyone that he wanted to talk with, they gladly gave him an interview. I will never forget what he said the day before he left. He said, Lindsey, you'll find it recorded, by the way, in my book, The Energy Non-Crisis. Senator Hugh Chance. I had to have a reputable person to see what I was seeing, or how would the world ever believe what I was going to say? He said, Lindsey, I was sitting in the Senate of the state of Colorado when the men came from Washington, D.C. to brief us as state senators as to the energy crisis. He said, Lindsey, from what I have seen here this week, from the mock-ups of the field, from the documentation, from the people I've talked with, I've come to realize that almost everything that I was told in that top-level briefing in the Senate of Colorado by the men from Washington, D.C., that almost everything I was told was the exact opposite of what the truth really is. He said, I was intentionally misbriefed and I was lied to. Later, when I wrote the manuscript to my book, The Energy Non-Crisis, I asked him to write the foreword to the book. He did. You'll find it recorded here with his name on it. I'll never forget that day. It was 1976. I walked over to Arco Base Camp one morning, and as I walked in the front door, there was standing a gentleman by the name of Jim Lawler. He was the equipments man for Atlantic Richfield. And I said, Jim, what's going on today? He said, well, Chaplain, would you like to really see something exciting? I said, well, Jim, I'm always in for excitement. What do you mean? He said, come on, hop in the pickup truck and let's go out to West Dock. He said, I'd like you to see what we think we have struck today. And I said, Jim, what's that? And as we rode along, he tried to explain that little island out in the Arctic Ocean, about 2.5 miles out from the West Dock at Prudhoe Bay, where the big flotilla came in every year. He said, Chaplain, we think we have just struck the largest pool of oil in North America and maybe the largest pool of oil in the world. Today we're going to release some oil, check the chemical analysis, the pressure of the field. We already know the size of the field. And he said the depth. And he went on to explain all the technical details that an oil man could. And when we arrived at the West Dock, we sat there for a few moments, and all of a sudden, a big black plume of smoke went up into the sky. That was back in the days when they still let them burn it off at Prudhoe. And after he watched it for a few moments, he said, come on, Chaplain, get in the truck. We got to head back to Arco Base. I want to see what's coming in from out at the well site. I'll never forget that day. And when you hear, as Paul Harvey says, the rest of the story, you'll know why gasoline could be $1.50 a gallon at the gas pump within 1 year's time if only the administration in Washington, D.C. would be willing to tell the American people the truth. We arrived back at base camp. Standing around the desk in Mr. Ken Fromm's office on the second floor of Arco Base was the top 8 oil company men of the world. I arrived with Jim Lawler at the door, and Ken Fromm, senior executive with Atlantic Richfield, said to me, come on in, Chaplain. And they closed the door. And there I stood that day with men that I never knew I'd rub shoulders with. Here I am, a simple missionary, aviation missionary out in the bush of Alaska, and all of a sudden I'm standing in the room watching the proof of the largest oil pool in North America and probably the largest oil pool in the world. Approximately, if I remember correctly, 8 men standing around that table looking at the mock-up of the field, looking at the perforations of the pipe, explaining all the details. I was invited in the room, and Mr. Ken Fromm, after a few moments of excitement, and I have never seen such excited oil men in all my life. They were almost beside themselves. And finally, Ken Fromm looked over at me, and he said, Chaplain, we have just done it. I said, Ken, you've just done what? He said, we have just struck the largest pool of oil in North America. It should be headlines on every newspaper in America tomorrow morning. America Energy Independent. We don't need any more foreign oil. We can supply from our own soil. He said we have everything we need. He said, Chaplain, this is the most amazing find we've ever discovered in America. You can imagine that night I went back to my dorm room. First thing I wanted to do the next morning was get up and see the headlines on the Anchorage newspaper that came in on Wien Airlines' first flight to Prudhoe Bay. I rushed back over to Arco Base that morning to have breakfast, and I'd hardly walked in the door good, and the security guard caught me and said, Chaplain, don't you say a word to anybody. You go right straight upstairs and sit down in Mr. Ken Fromm's office. I said, well, what have I done wrong? He said, don't you even talk to me. He said, you go up there and sit down. I got orders to catch you as soon as you come in. I walked in Ken Fromm's office, sat down. A few moments he walked in, closed the door, sat down across the desk without a smile on his face, and looked up at me and he said, Chaplain, if I were you, I'd be a little careful about what you saw on yesterday and what you say. Because he said, you see, that information about that oil pool out at Gull Island and the Gull Island field has just been classified. He said there will be no oil released from it anytime soon. When my book, The Energy Non-Crisis, came out, there was a chapter in there that alluded to Gull Island, the first edition. This is a new, updated, and enlarged edition. Just after it came out, I had a phone call, maybe 2 or 3 months after it came out, from who do you think? Mr. Ken Fromm. The man who was responsible under Atlantic Richfield's leadership to develop the entire east side of the Prudhoe Bay oil field. I have never heard an oil man so mad in my life. He was beside himself. He said, Lindsey, Atlantic Richfield has just fired me. I said, what? You're a career man. You're the head person. You're the senior executive for the development of the oil field. You produce the cracking plant up there at Prudhoe for all the oil up and down the line. You know more about the Prudhoe Bay oil field than anybody. You came up on the first Rollicons that came up years ago. He said, yes, but Atlantic Richfield has fired me. I said, why, Ken? Because he said, they've come to realize that I was the one that allowed you to see the information that you wrote in your book, The Energy Non-Crisis. Now he said, Lindsey, you're a missionary, a minister. You're not an oil patch man. And he said, there are a few things in your book that are not letter perfect. He said, would you allow me, he said, I'm so angry at Atlantic Richfield, would you allow me to rewrite your book for you? And make everything letter perfect? I said, Ken, I can't think of anything any better. Because he said, they're going to try to discredit your book on the grounds of a few words that aren't right. For the next 30 days' time, Ken Fromm and I sat across the table from each other and rewrote this book, The Energy Non-Crisis, and he added a chapter. The only place on the face of this earth that you will find recorded the largest pool of oil in North America, and probably the largest on the face of the earth, that our president and our vice president, who are oil men, know about and will not tell you the facts. The only place on the face of the earth you'll find it documented, written word for word. They've never been able to question it, nor in any way say that it's incorrect, because Ken Fromm himself wrote it. The consistency of the oil, the perforations of the pipe, the depth of the field, the pressure of the field, the sulfur content, where it can be refined. It's all right here. The only place you'll find it on the face of the earth. Well, this new updated and enlarged edition came out, thanks to Ken Fromm. About a month or two later, I had another call from him. He said, well, Chaplain, I'm glad I helped you rewrite your book. He said, Atlantic Richfield has just hired me back. They've given me a large increase of pay. They've promised me a bigger retirement. They're sending me to Houston to train all the executives that come to Prudhoe Bay from this point on. He said, I won't be able to give you any more information. He didn't have to. He'd given me enough. Because if the oil, watch me now, you need to take this to heart, because I'm going to make some very drastic statements in a few moments. You think I've said something so far. I haven't said anything that you've ever heard me say before. Because I've only begun giving this in the last 6 months. I decided I could not keep quiet any longer, because your and my freedom is in jeopardy. And unless something is done, America is going to be a has-been. Gasoline at the gas pump, 1 year from now, here in California, could be less than $1.50 a gallon if the oil that our president and vice president know about on the North Slope of Alaska were allowed to come to the refineries in America You know what it cost them to get a barrel of oil out of the ground at Prudhoe Bay, Alaska? Do you have the slightest idea what it cost Saudi Arabia to get a barrel of oil out of the ground? Well, I hope you have pencils and paper handy, because now I begin with some real nitty-gritty. And you may want to jot down some facts and some figures, because either things are changed with the administration in Washington, D.C. within the next few months, or America will be a has-been. Gasoline at the gas pump in California is going to be $4 to $5 a gallon in the very near future. How do I know? Well, what I'm to say from this point on, you will know that I know what I'm talking about. A little boy went to school one morning. It was down south. You know how they talk down there. I'm sure you must recognize that I have a southern accent. The little boy went to school, and the teacher was going around the classroom asking each of the children what they had for breakfast that day. And little Susie spoke up and, show and tell. Little Susie spoke up and said, "Well, ma'am, I had bacon and eggs this morning." Finally came down to little Johnny, a little country boy from way back out on the farm. The teacher said, "Johnny, what did you have for breakfast this morning?" And little Johnny said, "Well, ma'am, I ate 6 biscuits for breakfast today." And the teacher said, "Oh, Johnny, that's not correct English." She said, "The word is not it, it's ate." He said, "Well, maybe it was 8 I ate." Now, I'm going to make you a promise. What I have to say from this point on is not going to be a play on words. I'm going to tell it, as Paul Harvey says, the rest of the story that you don't hear in the news, that only a person who sat in the board meetings with these people, sat across the table from them, rubbed shoulders with them for 3 years, could have ever known. Things that I have not been willing to tell for the past 15 years for fear of my own safety. I've decided I cannot keep quiet any longer. So I hope you have those pencils and papers handy. In the early 60s, crude oil was chosen as the method of controlling the world. It affects every human being. There's only one thing that affects every human on the face of this earth. The toothbrush that you're going to use to brush your teeth with tonight is made out of plastic. Where does it come from? Crude oil. The plastic bag in the garbage can that you put in that you have in your kitchen, it comes from crude oil. The asphalt highway that you drove on in order to get here to this meeting tonight, it came from crude oil. The drugstore, the drugs that you buy, many of them come from crude oil. The shoes that you wear, more than likely they aren't leather. They're probably plastic. It came from crude oil. The polyester clothes that you're wearing, they are a product of crude oil. The price at the grocery store and the hardware store, it's going up because of the price of crude oil. My son and I went to the grocery store the other day. I keep very meticulous records. After all, I have to. Being in the business I'm in, if I was not a meticulous person, I wouldn't be able to write the books I wrote. And I keep records of what I pay at the grocery store for things. When I went to the grocery store the other day, every single item, without exception, had gone up from the previous week. My son and I had to go over to the hardware store and get an item. Daniel was kind of milling around the store. In a few moments he came over to me and he said, "Daddy, you know that step ladder you had your eye on the other day that you wanted to buy, but you just didn't quite have the funds to buy it?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You should have bought it." I said, "Why?" He said, "It's going up $19. Now, please write this one down. because it carries great weight with what I'm going to say tonight. What we pay at the gas pump is a form of taxation. Now, this is so important, I'm going to say it again. Very few things I repeat twice. What we pay at the gas pump for a gallon of gasoline is a form of taxation that goes to those who control the world. And before I finish my lecture tonight, I'm going to tell you who they are. You're going to be surprised. Well, I know what you want me to do. You want me to say certain names, don't you? Well, instead, I'm going to tell it to you as I lived it. Because you see, what you've read about in other books, not necessarily the truth. You're going to be amazed at who they are. Gas prices at the gas pump in California will be $4 to $5 a gallon at the gas pump in the very near future. And Dr. Stan Monteith, a very reputable radio talk show host, said to me on the phone the other day, Lindsey, you're wrong. It's going to be $6 to $7 a gallon, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit that he's not right. And when it happens, your standard of living in America and mine is gone. And it's all done by a design plan that I knew about 25 years ago. And I've tried my best to warn the American people for 25 years. And this may be your last chance to do something about it. Those in Washington are scared to death. They're scared to death to tell you the truth. They don't dare tell you the facts. I'm going to in a few moments. And you take it to them. And you try to tell them yourself if you can. Otherwise, we've had it. Why don't they tell you? Why doesn't President Bush tell you the truth? Why doesn't Mr. Cheney tell you the truth? CEO of Halliburton at one time. He knows it. Why don't they tell you the truth? I'll tell you why. They know what happened to John F. Kennedy when he did. And they shake in their shoes. They know what happened to Larry McDonald on Flight 007 when the powers that be had him destroyed. They know what happened to George Hansen, the man from Idaho who was in the Congress of the United States of America, and they destroyed him, destroyed his family, his home, his position, and after they had totally destroyed him physically and mentally, they patted him on the back and said, "Oh, George, go on. We can't find a thing wrong that you've done." Every man in Washington knows. Even to some of the congressmen you respect, and they wouldn't dare tell you the truth. But here it is. It'll be on tape tonight. I have it back on the table already taped. There was, back in the 60s or 70s, a gentleman by the name of Henry Kissinger. He was Secretary of State of the United States of America. While he was Secretary of State, he traveled to almost every oil-producing country in the world. He went to Saudi Arabia. After all, the Arabs had been nothing but nomads roaming the deserts riding on camels for many, many years. And he said to them, "I'll make you rich. I'd like to cut you a deal. And if you will go along with my deal, I'll see to it that we buy oil from you in America." Now, watch carefully and you'll understand why that oil from the North Slope of Alaska cannot be allowed to be brought to the refineries of America. Are you ready? Henry Kissinger said, "I'll cut you a deal." Oh, they said, "What is it?" He said, "We'll buy oil from you. We'll make you wealthy. You'll be sheikhs and sheiks. You can have everything you ever wanted." Oh, they said, "What's the deal?" He said, number one, you must denominate all oil sales in dollars. Oh, they said, "Gladly. We have no problem with that." He said, secondly, You can have a certain percentage of that money to build your own country, your infrastructure, and the people that are there, and to supply for your country. But you must take a certain portion of the money that we buy oil from you with. You must take a certain portion of those American dollars and buy our national debt. They didn't have the slightest idea what they were doing when they signed on the dotted line. And today Saudi Arabia and the other oil-producing countries of the world have no choice. They must denominate in American dollars, and they turn around and buy our national debt. Is the only thing that is keeping the American dollar afloat today. There were two countries that wouldn't sign. You're going to find this very startling. I'm going to give names and dates and places. I never did this prior to 6 months ago. I knew it for years. You see, it finally gets to a point that you have one of two choices. Either be a slave in your own land, or tell the truth and hope somebody will listen to you. And that's the reason I came here tonight, to try to get a listening ear before it's too late. There were two countries that wouldn't sign on the dotted line in the days of Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. Number one was Iraq. Saddam. He was too independent. He said, I'm not going to be obligated. The largest known oil field on the face of the earth is Saudi Arabia. Second largest oil field on the face of the earth is Iraq. The third largest oil field on the face of the earth is Iran. I'm going to talk about Iran tonight. You're going to shake in your shoes when you leave from here. I'm not pulling any punches with you this evening. It's either now or never. Either something is done now, or we are slaves in the very near future. Saddam said, I'm not going to sign on the dotted line. He had to be destroyed. Oh, there are a lot of people in the world just as evil as Saddam. A lot of Russian leaders that have killed more people than Saddam ever did. And yet we joined up with them in the last war. There are a lot of people in the world. Why did Saddam have to be singled out? Because he wouldn't go along. He wouldn't denominate in American dollars and buy our national debt. And President Bush Sr. had no choice but to destroy him. Now there's a name you'll want to jot down. The name is Abner Dethry. D-E-T-H-R-E-Y. I give it to you for one reason and one reason only. He appeared with me on a radio talk show just a few weeks ago. He has never done it before. He worked for the State Department and the CIA and was one of the individuals that was sent by our State Department to Saddam Hussein in February through May of 1990. To tell Saddam Hussein, our State Department will not intervene if you invade Kuwait. It was sent by our top officials and echelon to Saddam. We will not. You do remember that prior to the last war, that Iraq and Kuwait were one country, and Saddam was merely going back in to take back that which had been divided after the last war. And our State Department sent the message by Abner Dethry, who appeared with me on a radio talk show. It is recorded by the talk show host, and he said he took the message to Saddam from our State Department to tell them, we will not intervene if you invade Kuwait. It was all a setup by George Bush Sr. Because on August the 1st, 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait. It was intentional. Our State Department wanted an excuse to topple Saddam. And they used the invasion, which they had told him they would not intervene with, so that George Bush Sr. would have an excuse to invade him. Saddam was a little too strong for them. George Bush Sr. didn't get elected again. He had to wait 8 years. His son got in. He had to finish the job. Surprising? Jot this statement down, if you will, please. The standard currency of the world is oil. Whatever oil is denominated in will determine what the standard currency of the world is. The Federal Reserve note is nothing but a piece of paper. It is not the standard currency of the world. At one time it was solid. You remember it. Back in 1960, you could take one of these into a bank and buy one of these. Can you today? A silver dollar now costs $20 to $25, depending on its quality. That $1 piece of paper will not buy it anymore. If Iraq, if we fail, it's not going to be because we don't give them a democracy. Oh, by the way, you do know that we are not a democracy. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Not democracy. A democracy is we, the sheeple. A republic is we, the people. They want a democracy given to Iraq because they want control by the oil men of the world. And if they do not succeed, the American dollar is going to be worthless. It's not the fact that we don't win. It's the fact that if they don't succeed, they have big, big problems on their hands. Now they're faced with something else. They're faced with Iran, the third largest oil field on the face of the earth. The Bush-Cheney dynasty is literally milking America for everything it's worth. The powers that be have an agenda. They know what they're doing. I heard them talk about a 30-year plan for the Arabs when I was the chaplain on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline, and I have watched them carry out their plans meticulously without one single flaw. Now, before I give the next very startling portion of this lecture, I want to give an example. You'll very readily recognize this, any of you who are 50 and above. You'll easily remember back these days. In 1984, I had a phone call one day. It was from Mr. Ken Fromm. He was back with Atlantic Richfield down in Houston. You know, even the powers that be sometimes are a little proud and haughty. Have a good time bragging. And he used to call me up on the phone from time to time, and he'd say, well, Lindsey, this, that, and the other. And this time he called me up on the phone, and he said, Lindsey, are you going to be speaking anywhere around America over the next month or two? I said, yes, Ken. In fact, next week I leave to go to Seattle, Washington, and about 2 or 3 months later, finally wound up in Southern California with speaking engagements. He said, well, Lindsey, I'd like you to tell your audiences everywhere you go something that is going to kind of put your speech on the map. He was bragging, feeling good that day. And I said, Ken, what do you mean? Now, oil at that time was $32 a barrel. We thought it could never go any higher or the world would go broke. And he said, Lindsey, I want you to tell your audiences everywhere you go that crude oil is going to $10 a barrel. I said, Ken, no. No. I said, that can't happen. I said it would break the Arab world. It would break the oil-producing countries of the world. I said the people would rise up against their leaders and against their sheikhs and sheiks. I said, no, that can't happen. You can't go to $10 a barrel. Ken said very quietly on the phone, Lindsey, come on now. You sat in our board meetings. You know who tells OPEC what we're going to give them for a barrel of oil. He said, Lindsey, you know who's doing this. He said, now come on. Take my word for it. It is going to $10 a barrel. By the way, do you know what the price of gold was back at that time? $800 an ounce. You remember it spiked up to that? The powers that be who had made the Arabs and the other oil-producing countries of the world had said to these wealthy sheikhs and sheiks and others, they'd said, buy gold. No greater investment in the world than gold. They bought it. They bought it by the train car loads. They lined their swimming pools with it. They bought their Rolls Royces and their gold. They had everything they wanted, and they'd paid $700 and $800 an ounce for it because they'd been told by the people who I'm going to tell you who they are before I finish my lecture tonight. You're going to be surprised who they are. They'd been told by those people to buy gold, and they did. But you see, it was all a trap. Just like what's happening right now in our economy. Interest-only mortgage on your house, it's a trap. On and on and on I could go, it's a trap. They know what they're doing. Taking interest down to 1%, it was a trap. They told the Arabs, buy all this gold. It was a trap. Ken Fromm said, Lindsey, it's going to $10 a barrel. I begun telling that to my audiences as I arrived in Washington State. Sometimes the people in the audience would literally start giggling. They thought you're crazy. You know what you're talking about. When it finally happened that it went to didn't quite go to 10, went to $11 a barrel. When it went to $11 a barrel, I thought my telephone was going to ring off the hook. Everybody said, you're a prophet. I said, no, I'm not a prophet. I just know the people who are doing it. You know what the price of gold went to at the same time that oil went to $11 a barrel? You know what it went to? Remember? Went down to $300 an ounce. Who took it there? Same people that are taking it up right now. Why did they take it there? Because they knew that the oil-producing countries of the world who had signed on the dotted line, whom they had sold their gold to at $700 and $800 an ounce, would now have to sell it in order to maintain their economy, and they would have to sell it back to the same people they bought it from for $700 and $800 an ounce. They would have to sell it back to them in order to be able to put food on the table in their countries. They'd have to sell it back for $300 an ounce. It was all done by a designed, manipulated plan, planned in advance, and I knew it 6 months before it happened. Because I'd been told so by the senior executive of Atlantic Richfield, who kind of giggled over the phone and said, Chaplain, come on now. You know who's doing this. Someone said to me a while back, Chaplain Williams, don't you think it's time to brush down the cobwebs and start all over again? I said, no. I think it's time to kill the spider. The price of gasoline at the gas pump is a form of taxation imposed by them. Who are they? You want to know who really makes the money that you're paying at the gas pump? Now, this will probably be the most startling thing I'll say tonight. I'm going to prove to you who they are. You see, I knew 25 years ago. After all, I sat with them. I listened to them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. By the providence of God. No other way. Who are they? Let's start the chain. Any product, I care not what it may be. A flag, a picture, a table, a chair, whatever it may be. There is, first of all, a manufacturer. Then the manufacturer sells it to a wholesaler. Then the wholesaler sells it to an in-between man who sells it to the retailer, and the retailer sells it to you. It's a chain. It's true in almost every product. I care not what it is. It's also true in oil. The only thing is, you don't know who the in-between man is because they don't tell you, but I'm going to tonight. First of all, there is the oil-producing country of the world, and I'm going to take as an example the one that you recognize and hear most about, Saudi Arabia. They bring it out of the ground. You know what it costs to bring a barrel of crude oil out of the ground in Saudi Arabia? $5. You know what it costs to bring a barrel of crude oil out of the ground at Prudhoe Bay, Alaska? $3. I didn't say transport it. I didn't say refine it. I said bring it out of the ground. It cost Saudi Arabia $5, cost the North Slope of Alaska $3 from our own soil. Why are you paying $3 at the gas pump recently? Why are you going to pay $4 and $5 and $6 at the gas pump in the very near future? Mark my words. You're going to call me on the phone and say, Lindsey Williams, you were a prophet the night you came to this forum. You mark my words, you will. And I'm going to tell you, no. I tried to warn you. You can't drive these freeways at $4 and $5 a gallon and go back and forth to work and put food on your table. You have to depend on the automobile in California, and you'll be taking food off the table to put in the gas tank so you can run it out your exhaust pipe. You mark my words. It's already planned. How do I know? Who gets the profit? First, there's the oil-producing country. Then there is someone else that you don't know about. Thirdly, there's the oil company. Oh, all-time record profits. They say, we've never seen them make such profits. That's exactly right. They've never made profits before like they're making right now. They're not making anything compared to what that in-between man makes. And then there's a little service station attendant. Oh, sure, he's happy when it goes to $3 and $4 a gallon. He's making a few more cents per gallon. And he just thinks that the world has arrived at his house. Who is the person who is making this big in-between amount? Well, I know what you want me to do now. You're expecting me to get ethnic, aren't you? You want me to talk about some family, don't you? I'm not going to do it. Because I know better. I know who they are. I lived with them for 3 years. Who are they? I'm going to call them by name. I'm not beating around the bush. I'm just trying to get you prepared for a startling statement that you probably have never heard before. Who are they? Who's this in-between person? They sit behind the computers in New York and London every day, and they tell OPEC what they're going to give them for a barrel of oil for that day. They told Ken Fromm they were going to $10 per barrel, and he called up this little missionary out there in the bush of Alaska and said, Lindsey, tell people when you go around for your speaking engagements that we're going to $10 a barrel. How did he know it? Because they knew it. They sit behind the computers in New York and London every day and tell every oil-producing country in the world what they're going to give them for a barrel of oil for that day, and they are the only ones that know what they're going to give them. And they're making exorbitant profits. I'd like to give you an example of one of the profits they're making. You heard recently, you probably didn't recognize it. You see, the only difference between me and the average person is I know their buzzwords. If you'll listen to the powers that be, you listen to Mr. Greenspan. He tells you the truth. You just don't understand his buzzwords. You listen to the head of Exxon who testified before Congress here just recently. You listen to what he said. You didn't know what he was talking about because you didn't know his buzzwords. He everything but told Congress, get off my back, or else. I know what the or else was. Why? Because I lived with them for 3 years. Who are they? You remember just recently? You heard on the news. I mean, it was all across America. I heard it on the national news. World Bank, IMF, forgive all third world countries their loans. Did they? Did you know what they were talking about? No. You didn't know what they were talking about. I did. Where did they get the money from to forgive all of those third world countries their loans? You. Where did they get it from? Gas pump. $2.50, $3 a gallon. You've forgotten the days of 25 cents a gallon, haven't you, back in the 60s? Got a very short memory. Well, you're going to have a very good memory when it goes to $4 and $5 a gallon in the very near future, and you can't afford to put it in the gas tank any longer. You're going to remember what I've said tonight and wish you had taken more action than what you've been taking. Because you see, they could forgive all of those third world countries their loans. They in turn can see to it that the national debt of the United States of America is financed through the oil producing countries of the world. They can do every bit of it because their representatives sit behind the computers in New York and London every day and tell the oil producing countries of the world what they're going to give them for a barrel of oil for that day. And who are they? They're not the oil refineries. You're pointing your finger at the wrong people. And I don't work for them. And I never got 1 penny of remuneration or salary when I was on the Trans-Alaska Oil Pipeline. I was paid by my Baptist Mission Board. Alaska Pipeline Service Company never gave me 1 penny. I am not obligated in any way. You are pointing the finger at the wrong people. The oil companies are making exorbitant profits. Sure they are. But who's making more than they are? The IMF and the World Bank. Who forgave the third world countries their loans? The IMF and the World Bank. How did they do it? You paid it. They diminished our lifestyle in order to give to those countries. Oh, you think for a moment's time that they're not going to make us on the level of a third world country within the next few years? They sure are, because you're going to pay for your own demise at the gas pump. There's only one thing that touches the life of every human being on the face of this earth, and that is crude oil. They chose it as a method of controlling the world in the early 60s, and now the World Bank are the ones that every day the transfer of oil from those third world countries to the oil refineries, and they're the ones making the exorbitant in-between profits, and you will never find it out by reading anybody's books. And I would have never known it had I not been there and had been told it. Goldman Sachs predicted that crude oil will reach $105 a barrel. Who makes the profit? The World Bank and the IMF. By the way, you getting tired? You sure? Nobody going to sleep? Okay, I'll give one more here if you don't mind. Are we running too long? Okay, I'll put this one in. I didn't give it last night. Brazil. Brazil went to the World Bank many years ago and said, we'd like to build Brasilia. We want to make a great nation down here in South America. We need a loan. The IMF said, sure. We'd be glad to give you a few $1 billion. But we want some collateral. Oh, Brazil said, fine. We own the wealthiest land in the world, the Amazon River Basin. Oh, they said, come on, let us have that as collateral and we'll be more than happy to give you billions of dollars to build your country. They built Brasilia. They did everything imaginable. Finally, Brazil couldn't quite make it. Like none of these other third world countries can too well. Except Chavez. And a few others. They wouldn't denominate in dollars. And so they said, Brazil comes back and says, oh, we can't even, we can hardly even make the interest on the payments. The World Bank said, no problem. We'll be glad to give you another line of credit. You know, they didn't give them any money. Didn't give them any gold, no silver, diamonds. Brazil had all that. What'd they give them? Computer entry. So the World Bank said, yeah, we'll be glad to give you another computer entry. We'll give you another line of credit. Brazil said, oh, thank you, thank you. Oh, but they said, remember, you gave as collateral the Amazon River Basin. Who owns it today? The World Bank. Brazil doesn't own it. They had to give it to them for another line of credit. Anytime the price of a gallon of gas is over $2 a gallon, it went past that a long time ago, at the gas pump, the people who control the world make over $60 billion per year. I hope you'll put that figure down. When crude oil prices increased from $30 to $50 a barrel, the world has to shell out an additional $600 billion a year to the oil-producing countries of the world, who in turn turn around and buy our national debt. Now, what is going to affect your life in the immediate? It's called Iran. It is the third largest oil field in the world. Iran has said that by a certain date, and by the way, that date was given to you tonight by Wendy. I'm not going to repeat it. I will afterwards in questions and answers if you'd like. I have a reason for not giving it right now. I'm being careful what I say tonight. I know this is being recorded. Iran has said by a certain date, we are going to flood the world with cheap oil. They have built their flow line pipes. They have their ports ready. They already have their oil wells drilled. They have the third largest oil field in the world. They've said we are going to flood the world with cheap oil. And, here's the clincher, we are going to denominate all oil sales in euros. Our President and Vice President and Congress are shaking in their shoes because they know that if Iran succeeds on the date that they have said, that it will collapse the American dollar. Something must be done with Iran before that date. Watch out. A lot of people in the world have a nuclear bomb besides Iran. Why don't they go after them? North Korea, Israel, China. I could go on and on. Why don't they take them on? They have to have an excuse. You see, it was weapons of mass destruction. Did they exist? Why are they going to take Iran on now? Oh, you'll hear every reason in the world. There's a reason they won't tell you. They know that if Iran succeeds on the date that they say they're going to, it will collapse the American dollar. Because they'll undercut everybody in the world on oil sales. When President Eisenhower was President of the United States of America, someone came to him one day and they said, "President, Smedley Butler is like you." President Eisenhower said, "No." He had such a great admiration for Major General Smedley Butler, he said, "I would like to be like him." Smedley Butler wrote a book. I'm going to give you a quote out of it. "War is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. Only a small inside group knows what it's all about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the very many. Out of war, a few people make huge fortunes." Now, normally authors don't recommend other authors' books. I'm going to do so tonight. His name is John Perkins. You must get his book entitled The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. It is must reading after what you've heard me say tonight. He says it in a different vein, but he says the same thing. John Perkins, I don't know how he's still alive. John Perkins was an insider. He worked for the powers that be. In his book he says, economic hitmen are highly paid professionals who cheat countries around the globe out of trillions of dollars. They funnel money from the World Bank and the U.S. Agency for International Development and other foreign aid organizations into the coffers of huge corporations and the pockets of a few wealthy families who control the planet's natural resources. Their tools are fraudulent financial reports, rigged elections, payoff, extortion, sex, and murder. He should know he did it. And afterwards had such a guilt conscience that he had to write a book even at the cost of his own life. He is still alive. When Mr. Green, now I'm coming down to the closing and the punchline. I'm going to tell you why gasoline cannot be $1.50 a gallon at the gas pump. I'm going to tell you why they cannot allow the Gull Island oil pool to ever come to the American people. But I've got to lead up to it with this. And with that I'm going to close. Mr. Greenspan, Federal Reserve Chairman, when he began his tenure in office, the American debt was $1.5 trillion. Today, the debt in the United States of America, and we say he's done such a marvelous job with our economy. Today, the debt is $8 trillion plus. In the month of September, go back, by the way, in your computer, you'll be able to look this up for yourself. The U.S. Treasury Bureau of Public Debt website on one day in the month of September, recorded that the national debt went up $60.1 billion in one day. You can find that on your website. It was published. Our present administration, in the month of October, the Bush administration ran up a national debt of $94.4 billion in 1 month. OPEC oil producers are at maximum output. Saudi Arabia can't produce any more till they dig some more wells and put in some more flow line pipes. Every oil refinery in America is operating at 90-plus capacity. No new oil refineries have been built in the United States of America for over 20 years, and it's done by a design plan. The U.S. is importing 400 100,000 gallons of gasoline a day from other countries. The U.S. had 321 refineries in 1981. The U.S. only has 149 refineries today. Many plants are operating 24 hours a day with no downtime for maintenance to supply the growing demand. We are operating at 90-plus output capacity, and the least little bobble and the gasoline stations would have up signs, no gas available. Now, here is the rest of the story. President Bush cannot allow oil from the North Slope of Alaska to come to the United States of America. Because if he did, the oil-producing countries of the world who signed on the dotted line in the days of Henry Kissinger would not be obligated to take a certain portion of everything that we give them in payment for oil and turn around and buy our national debt. And the pork in Washington, D.C., and the $8 trillion debt would collapse the American economy and the American dollar. Therefore, our administration today cannot afford to allow you to get the oil from Gull Island Pool, because if they did and brought it out of the ground at $3 a barrel and allowed American refineries to refine it, gasoline at the gas pump within 1 year's time could come down to $1.50 a gallon or less. But Bush and the others in Washington know it would collapse our economy if they did it, and they cannot tell you the truth. Somebody must buy our national debt. Many others are besides just the oil-producing countries, but they alone would cause our dollar to collapse. Mark my words. You will be paying $4 to $5 a gallon at the gas pump in the very near future. Why? You will be paying the national debt through the gas pump. You will be paying the third world countries' loans at the gas pump, taking it off of the table where your children need food, by a design plan which I knew about 25 years ago and begged the American people to listen. Have you ever wondered what happened to the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence? 5 signers were captured by the British as traitors and tortured before they died. 12 had their homes ransacked and burned. 2 lost their sons in the Revolutionary Army. Another had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 fought and died from wounds and hardships of the Revolutionary War. They signed and they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. What kind of men were they? 24 were lawyers or jurists. 11 were merchants. 9 were farmers and large plantation owners, men of means, well-educated, but they signed the Declaration of Independence knowing fully well that the penalty would be death if they were captured. Carter Baxter of Virginia, a wealthy planter and trader, saw his ship swept from the seas by the British Navy. He sold his home and properties to pay his debts and died in rags. Thomas McKean was so hounded by the British that he was forced to move his family almost constantly. He served in Congress without pay, and his family was kept in hiding. His possessions were taken from him, and poverty was his reward. Vandals and soldiers, or both, looted the properties of Ellery, Clymer, Hall, Walton, Gwinnett, Haywood, Rutledge, and Middleton. At the Battle of Yorktown, Thomas Nelson Jr. noticed that the British General Cornwallis had taken over the Nelson home for his headquarters. The owner quietly urged George Washington to open fire. The home was destroyed and Nelson died bankrupt. Francis Lewis had his home and properties destroyed. The enemies jailed his wife and he died within a few months. John Hart was driven from his wife's bedside as she was dying. Their 13 children fled for their lives. His fields and grits mills were laid waste. For more than a year he wandered in forests and lived in caves, returning home to find his wife dead and his children vanished. Within a few weeks' time he died of exhaustion and a broken heart. Norris and Livingston suffered similar fates. Such were the stories and the sacrifices of the 56 men who signed the Declaration of Independence. They were not wild-eyed, rabid-rousing ruffians. They were soft-spoken men of means and education. They had security, but they valued liberty more. Standing tall and straight and unwavering, they pledged for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence. We mutually pledged to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, and gave to you and my son here and me the privilege of a free land, and to be an assembling tonight as free people.
Welcome back. Thanks for being here still. It's been probably quite a long video. I don't know how long it is right now doing it, how I do it with all the components, but if you're still here and you've invested your precious time into watching all this, I really hope you gain a lot from it. Crazy, hey? It's a bit like a metaphor of all the stuff I've been through, you know, like it's just like, holy crap, who would think of that shit? Like we're just behind the scenes, some allies and us, we talk about all the stuff we discover that we're not even sharing because it's too evil. But it's just, I've actually got it on my list, the Confessions of a Serial Killer or Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes, and I'm going to rewatch that just to appreciate how evil and diabolical some people are, because on the multi-D, I can assure you there's just so much nasty shit that's been seen and violations been going on. But also I just want to offer, like, we've been shutting down a lot of the negative realms and negative dreamtime realms and astral realms and all that sort of shit. We're just been taking it apart because the universe does not want these frackers here anymore. But this lecture, I hope, will help you marry the multi-D but with the 3D and how it's percolating through into the control of the world, and just really offer that all the bad that's going on isn't really organically just failures, like just out of the sheer inability to maintain peace and, you know, prosperity and stuff. A lot of the stuff going on is very, very well skillfully managed to create crises and distortions, and it's war on us, right? That's all it is. And we believe these people that we trust that have our best interests aren't the scumbags and the invaders in human skin suits that they actually are, when in actual fact that's what's going on. And so I just really hope this inspires you to dig deep, not really be codependent on anything out there, and really gain your sovereignty and strength to power through. And that fire that's probably lit, you know, you wouldn't be here unless you're a bit over the BS going on, and you're probably being chewed up and targeted and messed with by many in the community that do not want our betterment. As I've said in the past, a lot in the community, we've busted their relationship to the aspects in control, and a lot of the people are very highly skilled infiltrators that are working for the negative, that present themselves a certain way that you might think they're not, but they invest a lot, like Ted Bundy and his charisma and all that sort of shit, when he's just this, when there are a lot of just diabolical scumbags behind the scenes, right? So all my purpose of sharing these sort of things is to empower you with knowledge and truth, to then employ your pattern recognition to see it all in the reality. So this video might be a really awesome codex to decode a lot of stuff, and just, you know, if you've got doubts about whether this dude is a good guy or a bad guy. It's just, this might help you just see the pattern of these individuals and what is going on and what they're hiding and all sorts of stuff on all different levels. And honestly, you know, you might be in fear of being insignificant compared to the scale of this stuff, but they need to do all this shit because we are so freaking epic. And one of the things I've just been processing, and I haven't said this for a while, it's just like, on another level, like, we're so vast and epic and that, it's like, we sort of potentially invited this grinding down to nothing because we were bored and we needed a challenge. And we're just like, wanted to give these frackers a chance because we're so epic and we just could take care of them at any time. And so we wanted to make the fight fair by being so reduced compared to them and then flip it all and stuff. And just use it as a big, massive, long time soul exercise on some level. But I'm just being funny and a brat and stuff like that. But I feel like, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and they've been doing that and trying that for many of us. And just like the diabolical abuse people go through and targeting and suppression, and you know, there's been, we've had an enormous disadvantage, but they need that because we're badass and we're epic. So I really hope this inspires you to fire up, realize how amazing you are for enduring so much, realizing you have so much potential you haven't tapped into, and just realize when you look around humanity and stuff, yeah, you might have an awareness edge to a lot of people by being into these things, and don't feel bad about that. You know, the vast majority are asleep and we're still here, we're still doing this, we're still aware, and we're sort of structurally in control. We have so much potential, and so you just keep pushing yourself hard. Work hard, get fit, get your nutrition right, you know. Especially, I just wanted to also send a message out to my young spiritual brothers, a bit younger than me. I'm 48, I'm a bit older, like I don't have these sort of issues going on. But if you're sort of, you know, you're making a lot of progress and stuff, don't underestimate how attractive you are to the women out there. There's not a lot of guys into this sort of stuff, you know. Embrace spirituality, so it makes you an actual prize, okay? So just be aware of women putting themselves out, especially sexually, you know, because what happens in times of extreme fear, the reptilian brain in people triggers, and when there's enormous insecurity, the fear takes over. And one of the aspects of fear is this is what happened after 9/11. The sheer trauma of that event triggered the reptilian brain in a lot of people that actually initiate a lot of, say, women wanting to have children. If there's a massive threat on the species, then there can be a lot of sexual desire triggered in women to breed, all right, to save the species. So if you're getting advancements that are too good to be true, I'd be very careful that someone is like wanting to literally have your baby and hook you into their bullshit. Okay, so just be on guard of that stuff. I in the last couple of months with 00 Fracker, what he was doing, he was actually going into one girl in my city, and they had a partnership, they were doing it, and I was trusting this female, and it came out like this individual was trying to literally have my baby to keep me under control, right? Not that I went there, I don't give a shit, I don't think like that, but they were trying to hook me in that way, and he was trying to derail me on that front, and it's just fucking diabolical. So I just wanted to send a warning out to you spiritual brothers that are into this stuff, that you don't know how precious you are and how desirable you may be. You just really just be on guard of honey traps, things too good to be true, but don't also dismiss things. Like, there's amazing people bubbling up and stuff. I just really wanted to, because you women out there, you don't realize what it's like for guys. It's, you know, it's a lot tougher. Women can have that whenever they want, alright? But don't underestimate that, you know, women have played that to hook guys into their stuff. I know, like, vulnerable women and stuff like that, and it's just sad for the whole thing, because at the end of the day, it's like the need to go there and that, it's horrible. And I want to help make this freaking amazing planet the paradise it's meant to be, so none of us have to worry about playing those cards and all that sort of stuff to worry about things, because if we take care of the bigger overall structure, we just help Earth to restore to what she actually wants, and she's epic, right? So yeah, I hope this is rich for you. Influences Part 6 about the energy crisis and the BS sort of mismanagement of our society. By having awareness, it's very powerful. So you see through all the bullshit, like truth is very elegant and efficient, and it's an enduring falsehood and misguidance and all that. Just imagine how much energy is being invested to maintain this false narrative bullshit that's going on, and how unsustainable it is. So I've offered, my declaration is out there, and you can empower yourself by transmuting all the bullshit you're seeing and really letting it rip in that, and holding the energy of that, and being a beacon for our potential on the surface of Earth, when she is very grateful for all of us, I can tell you that. So I really hope this is potent for you. I hope you get a lot from it. I've sort of expanded the Influencer series to include stuff like this, because I think it's very rich, and it'll give me an outlet to sort of offer these sort of concepts. But I will definitely offer a lot of the misguided psychic warfare bullshit going on in the future. But yeah, thank you for being here. I hope you get a lot from this, and until next time, guys, stay strong, stay lit. You are probably the peer in your reality, and the rest are probably going to need to see and be inspired by us being strong now, alright, to show that there is another way, because at least now we know all the bigger scenarios of what's been going on. Now it's time to clear out these fuckers and make our universe clear and pure and awesome again, alright? Fracker free zone, here we come, alright? So until next time, guys, lots of love. Bright from down under, having fun, enjoying life, and sensing all the potential before us, alright? Take it easy, guys. Until next time, Andre out.
Heading for the city lights, 975. We're sharing each other, nearer than farther. Scent of lemon drips from your eyes. We are the people that rule the world, fostering in every boy and girl. All rejoicing in the world, take me now. We can drive, we live in adventure.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.